because the reader doesn't really care whether you're a Random House author or whether you're just Joe Schmo. The reader is after a particular experience. And if you can't deliver at a quality level that experience that they want, they're going to put it down and go on to something else. Everybody has something that they really know pretty well that maybe the rest of the world doesn't. So if you can put that across, and if there's a demand for that knowledge, just find the audience and bam, you're in business.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for following Financial Liberties. And today's guest on our podcast is Russell Blake. He is a very successful author and publisher on Amazon. He's published over 60 books. And he's going to share his best tips and secrets on how to become a successful publisher and make money on Amazon selling books. And this is part one of a two-part series. In the second part, he's going to discuss how he became a successful real estate developer in Mexico, and he's going to share his tips and secrets on real estate development in Mexico. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like and subscribe, and let's get into it. Good day, my name is Vin Maru from Financial Liberties, and today I have Russell Blake on the channel with us. He's an expat that is now living in Mexico, and he's finding his way, doing his entrepreneurship, whatever he's doing, he's going to talk about it. So, Russell, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing down here in Mexico.
Well, thanks for having me on your podcast. Name's Russell Blake. I am, among other things, an author. I have been in Mexico now for a little over 20 years. So been here for a while. Started off in Cabo San Lucas for a dozen years and then transitioned over to Guadalajara, to Zapopan, for another, I want to say 4 or 5. And then ultimately landed in Colima City.
Okay.
And I have a publishing company here. I have something like 76 or 77 novels out. And I also operate 2 construction companies. I have a design and build company in Cabo, and I have one in Colima, and both are active. And we got, let's see, 3 projects going in Colima right now, and a couple of big places like 7,000, 8,000 square foot in Cabo. So one could say that I'm living the American dream, but in Mexico.
Nice. So,
Yeah.
I guess before you moved to Mexico, you were not an established author. I mean, having said,
No,
no?
no, I started writing in 2011. I moved to Mexico, I want to say 2004. And what happened was I retired. I retired early. I sold my company, got the hell out of the US. I was going to try Mexico for 6 months. And if I didn't like it, Australia for 6 months, because I'd spent a fair amount of time in Melbourne, Australia, and that's the world capital of eating and drinking. And I was like, okay, this is amazing. And I was familiar with Cabo because I lived in Southern California. So Cabo was like, that's a long weekend trip from Southern California. You get on a plane, 2 hours later, you're in Mexico. So I was familiar with Cabo, and I just gave it a try. I figured, give it a month or 2, maybe 6 tops, and then reevaluate. And that was 20 years ago. So I guess I liked it. And I retired, but I got bored after about, I don't know, about a year of drinking margaritas on the beach every day. Doesn't really go well with my personality type. So I opened the design and build business, and that took off. Let's yay. But after 2008, your pipeline basically dries up after a massive financial dislocation. So by 2010, we'd finished all of our projects and everyone was holding on to their money. Nobody wanted to start any new project. So I found myself sitting around going, well, now what? So a friend of mine had sent me an article. I want to say it was in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, about an author who had started self-publishing, which was a new thing back then. He had ebooks out and he was, making a fortune. And my friend, I had written a couple of books just to try my hand at it, but I never intended to publish them. And he said, I read your stuff. It's pretty good. You may want to give this a shot. So I did. I had nothing else to do, so I did. And then about 7 months later, I had generated 6 or 7 novels because I'm tend to be very hyper focused. And I would work 12 hours a day on writing. That's my process. I can't do it for 2 hours. I'm 110% dive in. And I got lucky in January or February of 2012. It just took off and went from, I want to say, almost nothing to 60,000 books a month. So it was a sort of a golden era in publishing where ebooks were a new thing. There was a lot of excitement about it, and I had sufficient content. I was able to generate it at a high enough quality level and with enough regularity that was my differentiator. I already had a backlist of 7, 8 books by the time I hit. And most people, that's 10 years. So I did it in 7 months.
And is that self-publishing on Amazon? Then
Yeah, I did. I never wanted to. Back in a past life, I had experience with the music business. And, as far as I could tell, I understood how publishing works. It's the same as a record business. The content creator, the artist, gets screwed, gets almost nothing. And the marketing guys and the accountants and everybody else, they get all the money. So I
Yeah.
have no interest in that. I didn't retire to get a job, let me put it that way, and work for somebody in New York. But then when I saw the numbers, like the KDP was paying, Amazon was paying like 70% of the gross price of the book. To put that into context, if I did a deal with a New York publishing company, I'd be lucky if I saw 3.5%.
Wow.
So financially, the decision was pretty clear, and I didn't need, affirmations from the cognoscenti about how wonderful I was. It was a purely mercenary, okay, this is now worth doing. In other words, now it's worth my time. Because I know guys, I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of, bestsellers, New York Times bestsellers, Wall Street Journal bestsellers. And I won't mention his name, but he had 6 straight New York Times #1 best-selling fiction novels, and he was still working a day job.
Wow. All right, so you're a fiction author then, or?
Yeah, that's correct. I have a couple of nonfiction. I wrote a book about expat secrets of Mexico. There's my shameless plug for that book. Expat and it was just a discussion of venues that are a little more off the beaten path of the typical gringo tourist who goes to Cancun or Cabo or PB, and that's all they know. They think that's Mexico. And I wanted to sort of give a little exposure to areas that are more off the beaten path, less recognized. Although now, since I wrote it, Merida is on the map, and prices have doubled or tripled. And now, I was just there a few months ago, and it was it was all European tourists, and prices, frankly, were double what I'm used to in Colima. So I was like, okay, well that's no longer a secret.
Interesting. So you've been in Mexico for a while, and
Yeah.
you're a
A third
publisher.
of my life, almost.
Yeah. So you write your own books. Do you publish for other people as well, or is it just your own stuff? And
No, just my own stuff because, frankly, I have enough content. I mean, I look at it differently than I think most authors do. I look at it as a library of IP. So I look at it almost like a venture capitalist. I have a library of IP. I want to see what my ROI is. I can market that IP, and whatever is trending at the moment that happens to catch fire, because from year to year it'll differ. Like different series will take off, and then I just put all my weight behind whatever is taken off and let the other sort of languish. And when that sort of runs its course, then I do it again, and I put marketing across all of it. And that's what record companies do. They sign 100 artists. Each one gets a video and an album, or at least back in the old days. And then they put them out there. They're all good. There's no question that they're all competent at what they do. But 1 or 2 will start trending for whatever reason. And that's where you put all your money.
right.
So that's how I view my library of IP. And I think most authors, it's their baby. I worked so hard for this. And it's kind of, I'm very agnostic about the entire library. It's a business decision, what I put my back into right now. And I'm very careful. I don't do my own marketing because I'm a big believer in farming out anything that's a lower value skill set. And marketing, per hour, I can pay somebody else a lot less than I make by writing a book. So for me to market is ridiculous. It's stupid. It's the stupidest decision I can make. So I pay these guys, they spend a ton of money, but if my ROI is between 40 and 75% monthly, I'm a rock star. I'm doing well. So that's how I approach the business, and so far so good. What is this, a dozen years into it? No,
Awesome.
13.
So, part of what we're trying to do at Financial Liberties is give people different ways and avenues of making money or side income. So obviously you're a well-established writer. You primarily publish on Amazon. Would you give any advice to any new up-and-coming authors or someone who wants to enter into the writing field, what they should do? Obviously, you've chosen Amazon.
If I was going to try to make money, I would probably stick to nonfiction that isn't being addressed properly. In other words, where there's a vacuum or there's an opportunity, because even though it may be a small niche, your chances of selling a $10 nonfiction book are vastly better than selling a $3.99 fiction book. Because one, you're addressing a need. The need you're satisfying is, I need information about this. So if you can solve somebody's problem, you're probably going in the right direction. Fiction is entertainment. It's like there's so many different types of entertainment available for free. I would say that it's worse odds than it used to be in the music industry. So it's because there's no barrier to entry. Anybody can publish a manuscript on Amazon tomorrow morning, whether it's edited or not, whether it's readable or not, and they can have AI generate a cover, or they can go onto Fiverr and have somebody do it for $10. And they're just as viable as you are if you're the next Hemingway. So, it's a retail business that's mature. So you wind up having to pay for shelf space because that's retail. You want the end cap, you pay for it. Amazon has matured, and the golden era where you would get all kinds of organic visibility if you were selling, it's over. They've monetized the entire thing, and unless you have a substantial bankroll, you're not going to sell any fiction books because you simply can't get any visibility. The algorithms don't care about you. You start spending money, suddenly you're in the spotlight. But in nonfiction, it works a little differently. First of all, there's not nearly as many competitors. So you get a chance you have fewer competitors. And if you're smart about, like with Expat Secrets of Mexico, I want to say it sold something like 6,000 or 7,000 books now at $10 a hit.
And you get $7 of that, so
that's correct.
That's a decent buck.
Right. So there's some gear money.
Yeah. So if someone is new at writing, and obviously now they're considering Amazon, I find that sometimes it's hard to get traction on Amazon. You outsource your marketing. What would you tell someone who's new, is publishing their first book on Amazon, how to get some traction with that?
Boy, that's the $64,000 question. I think you have to do a professionally generated cover. You need to spend a couple of bucks on editing because nobody's going to read past the first page if it's unreadable. And you should be comparing yourself to the very best of the very best, not just other self-published authors, because the reader doesn't really care whether you're a Random House author or whether you're just Joe Schmo. The reader is after a particular experience. And if you can't deliver at a quality level that experience that they want, they're going to put it down and go on to something else because time's short. There are literally millions of available books out there. So you need to differentiate yourself on a quality level, but it's still like buying a lottery ticket. I mean, the numbers are not favorable. For fiction, not favorable. It's a lightning strike. So you can't assume that because you wrote the next War and Peace that it's going to get any sort of traction. You just can't. If it does, yay! But That
So
shouldn't be your retirement strategy.
so your best suggestion is to write something that's nonfiction that maybe people are have questions around of how to do something or what this is about,
And
or
that you have some particular expertise in that qualifies you as somebody to speak about it. Like if you just learned about Bitcoin 2 weeks ago and you're going to try to write a book about how to invest in Bitcoin, at a coffee shop because you're broke, you're not going to sell any books.
right.
It's just not going to happen because people have a good bullshit detector and they sniff it and they go, okay, this is nonsense. But if you, for instance, I wrote a nonfiction book about building in Mexico and all the pitfalls that you can face. And it sells, I mean, it doesn't sell anything like Expat Secrets, but it has found a narrow niche and nobody else has written a book like it. So, it sells X amount per month. And I want to say it's like $10 a pop. And whatever it sells, I mean, it took me maybe a week to write it. And it was all based on, how to avoid, becoming a casualty of the Mexican building industry. And there is a demand for that because people walk into it with Christmas in their eyes and then, they get just savaged and they don't know what happened. So my approach was, here's a problem that needs to be solved. So my advice in all businesses, I incubate, technology stuff. I do a bunch of different things. It's always find a problem that needs to be solved because that's where you should start. Not, I've got a great idea. It's find a problem that needs to be solved, assess whether or not there's a large enough market to justify solving it. And if there is, go solve that problem.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And what I like about this model is, you know, once it's out there and it's published on Amazon and it starts selling and gets some traction, that's just residual income that you're going to get for as long as the book has keeps selling on Amazon. So it's not like you're putting in an hourly work for an hourly pay and that's it, and there's nothing else that comes beyond it.
It's like writing any kind of content. You create a little widget, an app of some sort, and you sell it for $2. Well, great. That app, as long as there's a demand for it, is going to continue making you money while you're asleep. Now, you're not going to get rich, but you can see where if you write travel books, for instance, or you write, like my Mexican construction book, but if you see other problem areas like the documentation that's required to immigrate, for instance, to Mexico, or second citizenships and how to set up trusts so that you don't have to lawfully don't have to pay taxes in your home country. Well, those are all things where there's demand. And those are problems that a lot of people want to have solved. And yes, there's a lot of content on websites where you can find those answers for free. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a certain percentage that wants it all consolidated in one place and is willing to pay for that streamlining, if you will, your curation of that information. So just find a niche that's large enough to make it worth your time. And if you look at it as a very straightforward investment of time and money, let's say it takes you, I don't know, 40 hours to write a nonfiction book. And let's say your cover and your editing and everything else, you don't want to spend that much because it's nonfiction, but let's say you spent $500 all in. So you just have to look at what your expectation is. Like, what do you want to make per hour? Because everything after that is gravy.
Sure.
So if you want to if your time is say worth $150 an hour, let's say that's a number you cooked up for yourself. So then you multiply that by 40, deduct your expenses, and that's what your minimum target for that book is. But I'd advise you to do that math first, because if you're like, yeah, I don't see how that's going to sell that many, that's just the world telling you, don't write that book. Go find one where you can make the $150 now.
It's interesting because I've written in the past, and I was a newsletter writer, and I've actually wrote a report on how to internationalize gold. It was about 100 pages long, which I'm actually thinking of re-updating and putting it on Amazon. So it's nice, great tips you've given me on that. But I had a background in media in the 90s and early 2000s doing web and multimedia work online. And then I got into the finance space, and now I'm actually just diving into this YouTube world because it seems like there's some great traction that happens on there. And I just launched my YouTube channel itself.
And TikTok, don't ignore TikTok.
Yeah, absolutely. I did that too. And just Instagram and all of it. But this is all around the new business model I started with Financial Liberties and kind of taking my experiences that I've had in the past and whatnot. And actually, I'm done a lot of research on YouTube and how to be successful on there. So I think it's like anything, you once you do your research on how to become successful on a platform like that, or Amazon, for example, then it's just churning the content, make sure you have good quality content that people appreciate and you're knowledgeable about the subject matter that you're talking about. And
And
so whether
if you can, here's another thing, not to interrupt, but I don't advocate this because I'm still old fashioned in the sense that I take enjoyment in writing and some pride and craftsmanship of creating verse, et cetera, lyricism in the prose. But, if you take the dummies model, you can just farm out the content creation if you can find, a starving author who's got the requisite knowledge set, because then what you're doing is you're really just acting as a publisher and you're curating their information and you figured out how to monetize it. So then it's just like if you can pay them $500 to generate the book, okay, now your total expenses are $1,000, but it's a straightforward calculation. How long will it take you to make your grand back? So you don't even have to generate the content yourself in nonfiction. That's the beauty of it. There's
and
really
with
no
AI
rules.
nowadays, I mean, AI could do a lot of the preliminary work. I've looked into AI, but it still lacks a little. I think you have to go in and polish a lot of it, put your own spin, especially on a nonfiction book. You really want to bring your own expertise into it. So
And then monetize your erudition, monetize your knowledge, your skill set, which is particular to you. Because everybody has something that they really know pretty well that maybe the rest of the world doesn't. So if you can put that across, and if there's a demand for that knowledge, just find the audience and bam, you're in business.
perfect. Well, thank you for being on the show, and look forward to speaking to you again in the future. Thank you
Okay,
again. Take care. Bye.
bye.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this video with Russell Blake. He shared some great tips and secrets on how to become a successful publisher and author on Amazon. In the second part of the interview, he discusses real estate development in Mexico, and he shares some great ideas of how to become successful as a real estate developer down here. Financial Liberties plan to have more guests on our channel, ones that are particularly focused in Mexico that are very successful in entrepreneurship or in investing. So please like and subscribe to this video if you want to see more content like this, and we will talk to you soon. I hope you enjoyed and take care. Have a great day.